Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Teach Me to Sports Bet. My name is Kim, and I'm with PlayUSA, and this is my journey from never having placed a sports bet to hopefully funding my coffee habit. So far, it's going okay, and I want to welcome in my trusty teacher, my friend and colleague, and veteran sportscaster, Dave Bontempo. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Kimmy, nice to see you again. I'm glad to see you racking in some winning bets over the weekend.
I did. I was very excited. I almost had a clean sweep. If Seattle would have covered, my parlay would have came in too, but I'm happy that my three bets won. And to tell you the truth, I am 12 of 19. I didn't even realize how well I've been doing. So I'm excited.
Yeah, that is an extremely high winning percentage. Everybody, if you got 52.4% or higher, that's your avenue to winning for the year if you bet everything about evenly. So I'm really glad that you're off to such a great percentage, and you learn something every week. You do things. I pick up little wrinkles that you're doing, and it's been very effective for you.
My big lesson from this week is I feel much more comfortable betting closer to game time than earlier in the week. I don't feel like I have enough time to really devote to it early in the week because I'm managing my job and everything else on top of it. So I've decided I'm purely going to become a weekend bettor. I will tell you also that I put my picks on Twitter on Saturday, and oh my gosh, I was so nervous. I made sure I'm like, please, nobody pay attention to these because I don't know what I'm doing. But in the end, I wanted to say you should have paid attention to me because my bets came in.
On Monday, you saw what I said Saturday, didn't you? I told you in advance. Isn't it a little bit nerve-wracking to make your picks public? I mean, it's one thing to bet them, but then to put it out there, that's difficult. And that's why so many sports handicappers, when they say, oh, I've got a service and you can buy this for me, they hedge everything. They give themselves the best possible line when they're referring back to it. And everybody's got a supposed guarantee, but guess what? I don't know how many people are doing better than 12-7, so good for you.
Thank you. It's, I ended up winning $17.85 last week. Nice. I bet $5 on the Cardinals at -7. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to bet on the Cardinals, but they were playing the Jets. If they can't beat the Jets, then I was going to have to wash my hands of them totally for the season. So I felt really good about it, but not good enough to put $10 on them.
I think it was wise. We talked about this earlier in the year, that if you feel like it's a bet because of the Cardinals, because they're your Cardinals, realize that, and you went half, and that was smart, and you won this time. The week before you would have lost. So this is good. You made a nice bet, and I think going half was good because laying 7 points on the road is not easy. They did cover that, but that's still not easy.
Yeah, I was very happy with their performance as well. I'm really excited now to see them come home and hopefully do some good stuff. I picked my first underdog with the Panthers. Yes. The only thing I can tell you as to why I picked the Panthers was I just read desperation into the Falcons a little bit. And I know from my own personal experience that I do not perform as well doing anything when I'm in desperate mode. So that was my feeling. I don't know if that's accurate, but that's why I decided to take the chance on the Panthers, and I bet my first underdog, and they came through.
And they came through, and it was such a magnanimous development that the Falcons fired their head coach. They said, do you know that Kimmy bet against us and won? You're all out. Everybody take a hike.
Yeah, sure.
That was a nice thing to jump on because the Falcons, they should have won weeks 2 and 3. And when you don't win games in which you have big leads, you sag. And they were desperate. So that's a very nice call by you. And that was a real nice way to get into the underdogs.
Also, I'm of this philosophy that if you beat my team, you have to have something behind you. And since they beat my Cards, I was just riding that they were going to take the momentum in, and against Falcons who've been struggling so much, I thought that was a good bet. And then I don't really feel like I went out on a limb or anything, but I picked the Texans, and that obviously was also very nice for me.
That was nice with their new head coach, which I think that players have a different type of desperation when there's a new coach. This is something for the people watching this. What did you learn on Saturday that maybe you didn't know on Wednesday that made you feel more comfortable? What did you sense about your bets that made you feel more confident what you did bet?
I actually felt like I had reasons to bet.
Very nice.
Because I had more time to really just sit with it. I think I said last week that I'm more of a ponderer, and I like to take information and process it. I don't like to act on things very quickly. And I think in trying to get the early bets into the video so it's up before the weekend, that I was just doing too much, and I wasn't letting things sit, and I was just picking something for the sake of picking, and I felt like that wasn't really a very good move for me. So that's what I learned about me. I like to sit with the information. I'm not a rash, a rash buyer. I don't, except maybe in the supermarket when there's the chocolate next to the checkout stand. Other than that.
Understandable. But this is a good lesson for any level of sports bettor, is to know why you're betting it, and then to make the distinction as to why you like it, rather than that midweek stab. Or sometimes people say, hey, I'm going to chase last week. No. Zero in on what you like, and especially now because there is money to be made. So very good.
I did also put $1 on a parlay, and it almost came in.
Yes, it almost did.
I did the parlay on point spread. So I had, I have to look because I had the Steelers at -7, the Rams at -7.5. I picked the Dolphins at 8.5. Nice. I know. And then the Seahawks at -7. So the Seahawks didn't cover, so my parlay didn't come in. But I used this to just sort of test my gut a little. So
yes.
What I did also is, we talked about me being a chalk bettor, but I find it easier to look, when I look at a game, I think what I did this past week is I looked at who I based upon what I read, who I had strong feelings who was going to win. And then I started there. Instead of starting by looking at the point spread, I started with who's going to win the game. Then I looked at the points, and if the points were too high or too low or whatever, I moved on. And so it was a surprise when I sort of came to the conclusion that I thought the Panthers and the Dolphins were going to win, and then they ended up being underdogs. And I think that that's what was preventing me from betting the underdogs before, is I was focusing too much on the points and not really the overall performance of the game. So that's another way I approached it this week, and it was a much more comfortable feel for me to start with who's winning and then evaluate whether the points were going to whether the points made.
Talked about that in one of the early episodes, that this is a good way to approach it. And you did, which is nice. You figured out what you thought the score of the game would be just looking at it. And then you can play with those spreads and see if they're too far or too little. And that's great. You did a really nice job over the weekend. That's something to be proud of.
I was pretty excited. I feel like for the first time, I made bets that I believed, that I chose. Like, I feel like up to this point, I may have been sort of betting a little bit about the advice that you have given me, or I heard in, over the water cooler or whatever. But I felt like for the first time, I took a bunch of information, sat with it, and I made bets that I wanted to make, because we haven't talked about the Dolphins or the Texans. Well, we talked a little bit about the Texans, but haven't really talked about a lot of the teams that I chose. And it's funny that that's where I gravitated. I don't know.
Well, that's good. The last year, the Dolphins, they won 9 of their last 12 games against the spread, and they were very good as long as Ryan Fitzpatrick is in the game, because he was good enough to cover the spread even though they didn't win. And that's really nice when you're following a team. If they cover and then they don't win the game, they can stay a little under the radar the following week. Now, this week, unfortunately, Miami gives 8 points to those New York Jets after they crushed the 49ers outright for you. So 8 points is a tough call in a divisional game like that. But these are some of the good things, and you're expanding your knowledge about different teams and you're processing it. So you've moved into another level.
So it was interesting because the other thing that I looked at, and I didn't really have the time this weekend to really watch the games and get into the games, because I was really intrigued by the over-under. But I remember your advice was that you like to do that in game and watch the first drive to see how the defenses are performing as to whether it's going to be high scoring or low scoring. And so I didn't really have the chance to do that. But, I was also thinking about, what other types of things do you bet in game besides the over under?
Most of it this past weekend, I liked the Pittsburgh Philadelphia over-under so much that what I did was I doubled down on my over-under. I started a week before. It was at 44.5, and so I took that right away. And then after evaluating it at DraftKings and looking at some of the prop bets, I doubled that. I took it again at 47. Now, the difference was at 44.5, the money line, I had to give minus 110. But at 47 points, I got plus 140 because it was a more difficult number to hit. I should have done it again at 50 points, and I almost did, but I held off on that. So the other in-game bets I like to make, well, most of mine are over-unders. Some people like to go who will score next. That's a little bit more sophisticated, and you have to get a real sense. What you can do is, with an in-game, when you watch certain teams, it's like buying a stock at the low end. If you're going to bet on a team, the best time to bet them to win the game is when they are on defense and it looks like they might give up points. Because when that happens, that's already been put into the formula for that team. I'll give you an example. The Denver Broncos and the Jets a couple of weeks ago. Denver slid to plus 130 at the end of that game when the Jets were driving. And the Jets were about to take over the league.
But I said, they're the Jets. So I looked at that, and I took Denver at plus 130, even though the Jets were taking the lead at that point. And then Denver came back and won the game, and I got plus 130. So that's part of the hedge. You take a team if you believe they're going to come back from that. But the time to do it is when they're on defense and you think they might give up points. That's when you get your highest value.
That's scary, though. I mean,
what's that?
That's a little scary, though. Like,
sure. But if you're going to go in game, that's how in game works. And so that's why I like the surface level. That's why I like to double down on the over unders, because I'm rooting for both teams at that point. So with Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, that was an easy over under cover, and you double down and you see how the flow of the game is going. That's the only one that I'm really comfortable with. Sometimes the point spreads will adjust. And that's the same principle of, well, maybe you like the team getting 8 points and they're all of a sudden getting 14. And so you take it, and then after 2 more plays, they're down to plus 11. The spread changes on every play. So it's a matter of finding a sweet spot. That's why, for me, I like to keep it with the over-unders. Some more sophisticated bettors will be doing that every play, and God bless them. I just don't wish to do that level right now.
Okay, I haven't I haven't really assessed my comfort level with that yet. It seems a little intense, and almost that you have to make quick decisions, and I'm not sure that I'm really at a place that I feel like I can do that yet.
I don't want you to be in that kind of a place yet, Kimmy. That's a difficult spot, because what happens is now you're betting all the time, because to get the right value, you have to be betting all the time. You have to remember what you just bet, and then here comes something else that represents another good bet for you. So I like to do those. The one I told you about, watching the defenses after one series and maybe doubling down like I did on the Steelers. But you do have to remember, and people remember, that there's hundreds of bets you can make on every game. So even though it's nice that it's all out there, you want to hone in. And maybe one of the best things you are doing is that you are staying within your limitations of, you're growing slowly, which is smart. Just like a business grows slowly, your knowledge base and your betting is growing slowly. This is almost degenerate stuff, the in-game betting, if you do too much of it. It's nice for a tweak, but it's not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I will say it was interesting this week that I didn't have quite as much heart failure as I normally do either. I think I'm getting used to it a little bit. And I'm looking at it more as well, I wouldn't say business, because I'm certainly not a business, but, like more methodically. So knowing that I'm going to win and I'm going to lose, and sort of expecting that to happen. I mean, like you said, some of the better sports bettors are only winning, 55% of the time. Or
that's right. And the only question for them is, can they bang it with enough money the times they are right? So right. What you'll do is the VIG, which you pay the house, it will slowly drain your bankroll. So you have to get values on these different things that come up during the course of time. So whether it's the odds boosts, and there are promotions you can make at DraftKings that take that out of play. At some point, you have to make some big gambles on the ones you love, and therefore developing what you love and that feel over the course of time. You're already starting to feel more about certain teams, and that's going to be really good for you.
$17, I can't retire yet, but I certainly can buy a couple of cups of coffee. So I'm happy staying within my limit. I feel comfortable there. It's not a big win. It's not a big loss. It's just, I feel good. And it makes it, you're right, it's so much better when you really are just keeping it fun, at least for me. I mean, I know there are people that make a living doing this, and God bless y'all, but I don't have the heart for it.
No. If you're going to bet this much football, you'd better buy some stock in companies that have blood pressure pills, because you will need them all before the season ends. But, because of this unprecedented mobile age, which not even the pioneers of sports betting envisioned, now, you have so many choices available for instantaneous selection. And therefore, for everybody, and we like to keep this on a fun level, you can gradually move up. Be careful when the adrenaline is kicking in and you're really excited, because that's when you can make a lot of bets quickly and you may not know which ones you just bet. So the methodical approach and the slow growth is a way to make sure that you're still here in January and February and smiling when we're talking about everything. And for the budget you have of $500 per year, you're playing smartly within those limits right now.
Well, I think it's as a new sports bettor, I don't know that I was ever quite aware that a winning percentage was, so low that, you just think that successful sports bettors are winning a lot of the time. But, and so I think it's really important as a new sports bettor to realize that that if you're winning half of the time, you're doing really well, because it puts it in perspective and helps to maintain that limit,
Well, what happened, a lot of sports bettors will tell you about all the times they win, but you're not going to hear about the times that they lost. So because let's face it, we love stories. We love to tell our winning stories. Now, on a deeper level, what some of these people are doing now is they're buying what is called alternate lines, which you came across with one of your Ravens games. That instead of laying 7 points, now you move that line to 6.5, and you pay for it. So it adjusts the money line odds, but you get a half a point. There's a lot of that going on too. But there was a time when people used to wake up and drive across the desert in Las Vegas to shop for a half a point. and go to 3 or 4 different sports books. Well, that sports book is in your hand now.
Yeah.
And so you have that due diligence responsibility to figure out your best deal first and then go from there. And that's how you maintain your fun.
So that's you bring up an interesting question about shopping the lines. I know that I've edited articles that talk about, line shopping. I know that people do it. I haven't even entertained the idea because I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't want to complicate the simple approach that I'm taking just to gaining some information, knowledge, and a comfort level with betting, because I will say it's a little nerve-wracking. I just remember the first time I went into a poker room, it was really overwhelming, right? And I sort of have been feeling that a little bit here. I'm getting more comfortable with it, but it's really nerve-wracking, much more so than it should be for what I'm putting on these games. Well, so do you line shop, and do you recommend line shopping?
Yes, I recommend it. Now, for instance, last week with the Eagles and the Steelers, you could get 7 points at DraftKings, but FanDuel ticked it up to entice you to 7.5. Well, that's a nice, at 7.5 is a nice extra half a point. So you would take, if you're a Eagles bettor, you're going to FanDuel and taking that. And if you're a Steelers bettor, you're making your bet at DraftKings, because that could be a very important half of a point. So you do the line shopping there. I'm not necessarily a fan of moving the line and buying the adjusted line unless you're going to do it for a number of games, which some people do. But I just like seeing how the books line up to maybe get myself a half-point deal.
But I think basically, Kimmy, you're doing nicely because you're slowly building out and you're understanding all of your choices before you incorporate more into your game. Just like a small business needs to grow properly, your small business is growing properly, and that's nice. You're taking a little bit more each week. What's that?
I said very, very small.
Well, that's okay, but the principle is what's important there, regardless of the size of it, rather than all of a sudden, hey, Dave, I had a 12-team parlay, and you got a big cigar coming out now, and you got, $50 parlay. Is that all it pays? I only get $600? I'm going to have to send someone to see if you got taken hostage if I ever hear that from you in the next few weeks.
No, I like parlay betting, but I think the $1 is just fine for me.
Yes. That's a good way to get into it. Yeah.
Well, and it was like these teams. It was the teams where I, was on the fence, and so I'm like, well, let's just see what I feel is going to happen, and let's put it into something for really inexpensive. And so it's sort of fun to do that. Oh my God, and it was such a great Sunday because I had everything come in, and I was waiting on that last Sunday night game.
Yes. Oh my goodness, that was so you're 3-0 going into the parlay, and it really grabs you. Now I had one overnight, Kim. I lost while I was sleeping. It was the NC Dinos in the Korean baseball. Blew a 4-run lead for me in the final bottom of the 9th inning, and they're the league's leading team. I'm like, how could you do that to me while I'm sleeping? I had a 2-team parlay. I took the over, but it is. I woke up and said, "Oh, there's all these runs scored." And I said, "Oh no, they got beat by the last place team." So it really, but it was for $2. I had it. That's why it's good to not have too much.
Oh,
but you're really doing great, expanding yourself out in a nice way.
Thank you. Okay, so what's up for this week?
Well, what we're going to look at this week is that there are some great games and teams are going to define themselves. The Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns. You look at this, they have combined for 8 wins in a row between them and 5 wins in a row on the spread. They play each other, and Pittsburgh is giving Cleveland 3.5 points. Note about Pittsburgh, in the last few weeks, they're right on the line. Where that spread is, that's where those games are very close to ending up. And in the last couple of minutes of the game, the spread is still in question with a Steelers game. So they're both good teams right now. One of them is going to come out of here looking very good. The Baltimore Ravens, their defense last week had a great game against Cincinnati. They're giving 7.5. Now it's up to 8 points against the Philadelphia Eagles on the road. That's just a tribute to how good that team is. Minnesota has lost two games by 1 point this year, and they're giving 3.5 points at home to the Atlanta Falcons, who have a new head coach. So Minnesota is playing for their season. Atlanta's season is over, but they're playing for something. And you have bye weeks coming in now. For the first time, we got a full slate of bye weeks where not all the teams are playing. And your Denver Broncos are playing a surprise game on Sunday at the New England Patriots because of a previous COVID rescheduling. So this was going to be their a week where they might have been off, but now they're playing.
Wow, that's a lot.
Yes. Well, you have a couple of days to sort it all out. See,
yes.
aren't you glad you're not betting right now?
Yes. I know that there's a lot of schedule changes this week, and I wanted to ask you, how does that impact a team if in fact they were scheduled to have a bye and are now playing or now not playing, or their game was moved? There's been a lot of rescheduling and reshuffling this week, and then there's still a few games from a few weeks before that need to be played. How does that impact a team? How do you account for that?
Well, when teams have been off that much, generally in the past, I have liked to go against them their first game back. But when you have a situation like Denver and New England, well, they've both been off a little while. They're both coming off a bye week, and some teams are coming off of more. We'll get a great indication with the Tennessee-Buffalo game because that's being played on a Tuesday night. One of the rare Tuesday night football games. The Tennessee Titans have been off a couple of weekends now, so they've had like a bye mini season. But they're 3-0 coming into the game, and Buffalo Bills haven't lost against the spread. So you look for teams are going to be rusty. The timing will be off between quarterbacks and wide receivers. These are some of the things that come into play. But when it's been happening with both teams, you really don't know. This year, the scoring is generally up because of the defensive coverage is just not coordinated. So you have that. There's no Thursday night game this week because Buffalo is going to play in the Thursday night game, and now they have to play in the Tuesday night game. So there's a lot of that, and there's a lot of unprecedented ground in the NFL that there's really no back data to support what will happen.
I think that makes me a little unsure about what I'm going to do too, is just sort of seeing all of the shuffling and all of that. I don't know. It feels like things are up in the air.
Yes. This is the juggling act right now with teams coming in. A great game to watch, and one which will be bettable because of the low line, is Green Bay is now giving 2 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. Green Bay is the only team in the NFL that has beaten the spread now every week. It had been Seattle as well, but Green Bay they just keep on winning. And Tom Brady, that team gets a lot of love every week from the bettors because of the expectations for him. He has a very good game, and then he has a game where he's sort of like in the middle. And I don't know which one of those games we're going to see this week, but you're going to see Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, so that's a treat already.
So with Brady's fourth down hiccup in the last weekend's game, how does he respond to that this week? Is he going to be sharper because something got by him?
Yes, I think he's going to be pretty angry about what happened because he's been an intense competitor his entire life. He's got all those Super Bowl rings, and he's a marquee player. And marquee players, when they have a bad week, will usually come firing back. He had a bad first week against the New Orleans Saints, and the next week he came back very sharp. So I would expect that professionalism to light a bit of a fire under him just because of how proud he was and always is. He still remembers that I think 199 players were taken before him in the NFL draft, and he's never forgotten that. And he's always used that as a kick in the rear end to drive himself forward. So I look for him to come out with resolve.
Interesting. Okay, Dave. I'm not sure what my task is this week, but it's to do something.
Yes. Well, yeah. In situations like this, first goal, don't get hurt. Start with a couple of $1 things. Try to get some magic with a couple of those small plays. It will come to you. The Arizona Cardinals, we need to mention this, are only 2.5-point favorites now against the Dallas Cowboys. And there's a big story that everybody needs to know with the injury to Dak Prescott of the Cowboys knocking him out for the season. That changed the line on that game by 5.5 points.
Wow.
Dallas was originally a 3-point favorite. Now with Andy Dalton as the new quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys, that line has moved to Arizona. The line is 2. So Dalton, he's learning a new offense. He's not Dak Prescott. So that's a big change in that game. And Dallas, by the way, has 163 points, and they haven't covered a single game this year. Not one.
The Cardinals always have a tough time against the Cowboys. We've always had a tough time against the Cowboys. So I'm hesitant. I'm not sure yet about my Cowboys or about my Cardinals. I will say I wasn't going to bet them last week because I was mad at them, but I ended up, I could not because it was the Jets. This week I'm less sure.
So last week was $5 forgiveness for the Cardinals with you. What you look at in that game is Dallas has allowed 180 points. That is the most in all of football. If you ran down the field with a football, Kimmy, you'd score a touchdown against them. That's how this year they just can't seem to stop anything. So Kyler Murray is a great mobile quarterback, and he's going against a quarterback that cannot run as well, Andy Dalton. So I would expect Arizona to try and pressure Andy Dalton and try to force some mistakes. It's going to be a very interesting game, but that line has already moved 5.5 points. And so if you're betting the Cardinals, you are betting into a position of strength there with one of the great quarterbacks in the game now out of the lineup for the Dallas Cowboys. And that's something that bettors are going to be evaluating.
I will keep that in mind.
Yes.
Well, Dave, as always, you give me a lot of stuff to think about, and I am glad that I'm giving myself the time to actually think about it too.
Well, it seems like this second wave has been very profitable for you.
It has.
So keep with that style.
I will. So let's hope for no more shuffling this week, and I wish you good luck. I'm going to take some of that luck for myself. Yes,
you're doing well. Bet with confidence, Kimmy. Bet with confidence.
I did last weekend. I hope I can continue that trend. I felt really good going into last weekend. So until I had to put it on Twitter, but I got over that really quickly as well. So who knows? We'll see.
All right. I look forward to speaking with you again next week.
Talk to you later, Dave.
All right. Good luck.
Bye-bye.